it's almost like we've been lulled into thinking that security is the most important thing. It's because the world is so dangerous, right? And not saying it's not saying, like obviously, you got Russia and you got China out there and everything. But we've been so inundated back to the 1950s or, obviously earlier, but, and leading into the Cold War and all that stuff where it's like for your safety, for your safety, for your security, for your security. Um, and I wondered, this would be an interesting stat to look up, but when did we go from a nice balance of freedom and security to being worried more about security and safety at the
Yeah,
behest of freedoms?
when we stopped doing shit for ourselves, I think. And life is really good, right? And I'm talking air conditioning, heating, electricity, quality of life,
Hot showers.
hot showers, as much water as you want. Like, who wants to give up that?
Yeah, yeah.
And so people, and China figured this out a long time ago. And that's why communism seems it's not going to work because I think they're going to eventually collapse. But that seems to be why they're getting the support of some of the people over there, is because the quality of life in China 50 years ago was shit. Now it's really pretty decent.
Mm.
People have jobs, they have money to spend, in a lot of respects. They have a place to live, and the quality of life seems to be a lot better. And so, but China's philosophy is like, if you're going to do communism, you have to give people a really good quality of life, and then they won't want to give that up for anything. And they'll, even Fauci said it recently or something, where it's like you start taking shit away from people, they whatever tribe they stick to, they just throw it out the window, right? And it's like people, when you get like cheese for, I mean, look at my dog, for instance, right? If you keep the dog outside, the dog's fine with being outside. The dog gets tougher. The dog realizes that's the way of life. But if occasionally you bring the dog into the nice air conditioning on a 100-degree day, that dog's going to slobber all over the door until you bring it in. It's
Mm.
just going to stand there. It's going to try to get in, and it won't go outside by itself after a while anymore because it's like, I'm not leaving this. It's amazing in here.
Right.
And it's like, but you're giving up all your freedom to run around, to go dig your holes, to go sniff out snakes or whatever it is that you're sniffing in the backyard. All the fun stuff, all your toys are out there. Doesn't care. I'll sit in the crate.
Mm.
It's like we get lazy, we get comfortable, and I don't want anybody to take that away from me. And that's not my personal view. I just think that's the general consensus.
Yeah, and we got here slowly too, right? So it's
Oh yeah.
was and accidentally. Have you read Entertaining Ourselves to Death? Neil Postman?
No, but it sounds good.
Um, yeah, it's an interesting idea, and it basically really takes a deep psychological dive into whenever the telegraph was invented back in the like 1887 or something like that. For the very first time, something that was irrelevant throughout all of human history in, say New York. I'm here in Texas, and there's a mugging in New York. It's completely irrelevant to my day-to-day life, but now I can wake up and get the morning news and find out about a mugging last night because the telegraph was able to send it to the local paper or whatever.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden irrelevance, just a seed of irrelevance, has now become relevant to me. And then you build on that 100 years, 100 years later, it's 1987, there's television, and it's, you have stuff like Sesame Street, where Sesame Street is teaching us that the only way you can learn something is through entertainment,
Yeah.
right? So the book doesn't go in talking about making like Tinseltown. is entertaining ourselves to death. This is entertainment and knows it's entertainment, and you know it's entertainment. It's not trying to teach you anything.
There's no agenda.
Right. So whenever you now have a situation where you're teaching the student that in order to learn, we're going to give it to you via entertainment, right? So that starts in the 80s. I don't know when Sesame Street was invented, but maybe the 70s. And then now you fast forward and life becomes more and more difficult for teachers. Now teachers have to try to entertain while they're teaching and do all these things. And if like what is being taught isn't necessarily retained, but the student will recognize the fact that that was their favorite class because they were being entertained, right? But
Oh,
it's not necessarily what they were learning is deep seated. It's just the way that they were receiving. So it's an interesting book. It's fun, and it doesn't necessarily dive into what the internet was eventually going to lead to, but
well, what's interesting with my kids is that they have a hard time delineating between animated film and live action. And I
and
have the hardest, and they're smart kids, and
how
I
old
have
are
the
they?
7 and 5.
7 and 5. Okay.
And so, because you tell them movies aren't real and it's all fake and it's contrived. But then they have a hard time saying, like, for Turbo, does Turbo exist? Are there snails like Turbo? Or the people the human characters in Turbo, does that person exist?
Oh, interesting. Right. So you're
And
just
it's like, well, you say they just put a camera on them. And I'm like, well, no, that movie's created entirely within a computer.
hmm,
But then they have a hard time understanding, well, like, so Mission Impossible is created in a computer. And I'm like, no, they take a camera and they point it at Tom Cruise, and they make it. And it's really hard to explain it because you're not sure what they're not getting about the difference,
right.
right? And you're like, clearly, because the animations are, I mean, we didn't have this. The animations, we could clearly tell the difference
Yeah.
scenes. So, like, the 7-year-old's fascinated with sharks,
Mm,
and she watched parts of the Meg, the big megalodon with Jason Statham.
right.
Kind of not really a child movie. Um, but then we went and watched the behind the scenes of the Meg, because she's like, how did they get the shark to do that? And
Uh,
I'm like,
yeah.
oh, or how he, and then they see, like, the wires ratchet him off the boat, and they're all like, oh, so that's, and I'm like, yeah. They're like, but it doesn't look like the movie. I'm like, and then you got to go show them the movie where they have the green screen, and then they layer in the background, and then they remove the ratchets, but it all happens so fast. It's just like beyond their comprehension. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's so much information to take in, but that's kind
Yeah.
of cool to be as a filmmaker and an artist. That's probably a cool um, step in their growth as little humans.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. Um, Letting your 7-year-old watch Meg. It's funny.
Yeah. I mean, I watched Jurassic Park at 7 years old or 8 years old, whenever it came out, 6 years old, maybe.
Yeah.
And I was scared shitless. My 7-year-old's a little bit tougher than I
That's
was.
funny
Yeah.
because she's because now surrounded by TVs, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I showed Jurassic
And
Park.
mine was at a movie theater in the dark, right? Hers
Right.
is on the
At
couch at
7?
home.
At 7, you went to the movie theaters to see Jurassic Park?
Yeah, my mom and sisters took me to Jurassic Park, and when that T-Rex came on, I was I was
I
crying. I remember it.
My nephew was like 7 whenever I let him watch it for the first time. And I remember he became fascinated with dinosaurs, but he was scared to death at the T-Rex. He was hiding behind the couch, and I would just look back and see his eyes would just kind of peek around the edge of
Yeah.
the couch and just stare and watch it. I was like, should I turn this off? And he's like, all right, but he was terrified.
Yeah.
So, but Jurassic Park was also, that was what a feat in movie making, right? The jump from everything we had. Jurassic Park is kind of like a good delineage point where it's like movie making will be different from here on. Like the
Sure.
quality of CG, what you get, everything that set the bar. So you couldn't, it was hard to go back and watch something made after that that didn't use CG to that level.
Right.
You're like, oh, this sucks. Where before, prior to Jurassic Park, it would have been good. You would have been like, this is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the
Like the
fight
end of,
scene of the 80s.
yeah, like the end of Terminator, whenever he's like coming out of everything and he's full robot now, and it's like, oh wow, it's terrible,
Yeah.
horrible,
Yeah.
but it was fantastic at the time. Jurassic Park destroyed that. Real quick, I don't know how much time you have here. We didn't really discuss the our time limit here, but if I still have you for a little while,
Probably just a couple minutes. I gotta get on the phone at
tell me
4:30.
4:30. Okay, okay, yeah. So then we'll just wrap it up. So anyway, Brett, this was, I didn't actually introduce you at the beginning. This is Brett Edwards, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sitting down and kind of fumbling through this as I figure out how the hell you even do a podcast. So
Yeah.
much
Yeah. My
love, sir.
pleasure, man.
I appreciate you.
Hey, likewise.
And I look forward to doing more of this and us actually sitting down and laying down the dialogue for the first three mini episodes.
Yeah. Just let me know when.
Yep, will do.
All right, partner.
All right, appreciate you.